Alright, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I beg to those who are watching right now, especially to Madam Nurul, which is my lecturer who will be reviewing my speech. So, essentially, I had to, so a brief introduction. I had to record this video rather than giving a talk in front of my beloved classmates. See, because around around the last 2 weeks, I've been caught with dengue fever, and honestly, it was a very challenging week. And I'm very grateful to Madam Nurul for, I guess, for helping me by letting me and letting me do my speech in a video form. So a huge appreciation and thank yous to Madam Nurul, and um, I hope everything is well on her end. And so, without further ado, let's begin. So, the topic that, or the general theme that I received for the speech is mainly about movies. So, I thought to myself, what movies should I do? And from what I've gathered, a few of my classmates who got the same team as I did made about their favorite movies, movies that empower feminism. So this got me thinking, so what type of movie should I do a review on that I believe that should give an impact to my classmates or to the viewers who are watching right now? So Eureka, a light bulb struck to my head. It got me thinking about war movies. So war movies in general. So essentially, when I mention the word war movies, I'm pretty sure that the general thing that pops in your head is about action, right? It's about shooting bad guys, about how there's a good guy and there's a bad guy, and both of them have different views and different motives, and which is why they are at war with each other. So, but the movie that I want to review or I want to share with you guys today is not your average cup of tea, as some people would like to say. So the movie that I want to review is about is the movie is called All Quiet on the Western Front. It's honestly a really good movie. It's not I won't honestly saying it's a good movie would be an understatement, because the values that the movie holds, in my opinion, is something that everyone must watch. So I don't want to spoil it too much, but I will be reviewing it in a general form. So before my speech ends, I highly recommend those who are watching this video right now should add All Quiet on the Western Front to their movie list. So, a disclaimer that I would like to say, the movie All Quiet on the Western Front is actually based off a novel by Eric Maria Remarque. I do apologize if I butcher her name, but Eric Maria Remarque is a novelist back in the war years, in the World War II, in the World War One to into the World War II years. Um, he's a novelist that has been known for writing a lot of masterpieces. So the movie All Quiet on the Western Front follows the story of Paul Baumer. So the narrative follows the enlistment of Paul Baumer in the German army with his friends. To put in hindsight, Paul Baumer had disillusionment about the Grimm's reality of war. To them, war is something that should be glorified. To them, they want to kill, they want to conquer the opposition. But when when the movie goes further in, as we are put hours into the movie, this illusionment is rather awoken with the grim reality of the trench warfare, and it honestly highlights the epitomizing of the loss of innocence and the psychological toll that it takes on the soldiers of war. Um, although although honestly, from what I can observe from the movie, although honestly it has a majority of bad values, but it also highlights the value of comradeship and camaraderie. The novel or the movie delves into the deep bonds formed among soldiers, portraying the shared trauma that they've received together and the fleeting moments of respite amidst the harrowing experiences of combat. So, despite they're at war, bonds, unbreakable bonds are formed during those war times, because essentially in war, I don't think you will expect your friends to be with you till the end, because war is something that is not to be played with, as we all know. But this movie honestly shows the history of the mentality of the soldiers or the citizens back in the day, how they want to go to war. And this movie also reflects on the values of patriotism. The author, Eric Maria Remarque, forgive me if I butcher his name, narrative challenges the traditional notions of patriotism, presenting a stark portrayal of the futility and devastation wrought by war. So essentially, Eric Maria Remarque is someone that we know as a realist. A realist is someone that who is always speaks about the reality. They are not disillusioned. So I believe we should be very grateful that Eric Maria Remarque existed back in the old days to give a awareness to those who are to those back in the day. But 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 back in the day, um, I don't think most people or most men back in the day would be reading novels. So essentially, although the damage has been sought, at least we as the future generations gets to admire Eric Maria Remarque's novels, so that we can so that we as the future generations can essentially realize the reality of war. It is not something that you will want to play with. So, as mentioned before, although the movie commercializes itself as a war movie, but what I love the most about the movie, on mainly why I said saying the movie is great would be an understatement, is because the movie has hidden interpretations for us, the viewers, to interpret ourselves. So essentially, from what I've gathered, it's not actually a war movie. It's an anti-war movie. Honestly, the main themes of the movie is about anti-war. It um, it highlights the horrors of warfare. It critiques nationalism, and it also highlights the loss and despair that is experienced by everyone back in the day during the wars that has been sought. I mean, we don't even have to highlight the war on this specific movie. We can we can we can also mention other wars, maybe like the first World War One, or World War Two, or even the Cold War. So to further elaborate on the three main points that I've noticed of the themes is that the first one is about the horror of warfare. So this novel or this film vividly captures the horrors of World War One. So it depicts that. Bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, those who are watching, this is the first war, and even though and even from the first war, we've noticed we have witnessed from this particular movie a a a horrifying um a horrifying vivid of how war is. So bear in mind, this is the First World War, and we also have the Second World War, and then there's also the Cold War, which is about drugs, if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but you can see that even from the First War is already bad. Can you imagine if a war happens now? Can you imagine the grim reality that what will happen if World War III happens? So, in my opinion, this movie is very good. I mean, like I said, just normal compliments would be an understatement. This movie is, I guess, I would highlight it as a masterpiece. And I'm sorry if I was, if I was elaborating too long on the first part, because this movie is really good. So continuing on the second part, the critique of nationalism. Honestly, the author, the main reason why I mentioned the critique of nationalism is because the ones who wants to send people, who wants to send men to war, is their nationalism, is their own country. Their own country wants to send their men to war only to die, because as we all know, statistically, the ones who make it out of war is honestly, I won't even say half of the original deployment of the people. So essentially, a full on battalion that are sent to war. Statistics shows that not even half of the battalion makes it out alive. So honestly, nationalism, although as we all know, is a good thing, but when it comes to war, I believe that there should be a black and white line, because from what I've noticed is that when it comes to war back in the days, there's a gray line. There's a gray line, because blind nationalism is not something that you should want to follow. Another example that I would like to give is also about a novel that I read this semester. It's about Animal Farm. Animal Farm, I hope you guys know. If you don't know, you can search it online. So the novel Animal Farm, there's a character, if I'm not mistaken, his name is Boxer. So Boxer is another great example of well, in the novel, he's an animal, but he's meant to be a representation of those who are blinded by nationalism, who blindly follows something. And in the novel, Boxer died giving his all to his country, or in this case to his animal farm. And the sad part about Boxer's death is that his sacrifices were in vain, because in the movie, the ending is not exactly bad. It just shows you the reality of communism. The novel highlights about communism, but the sad part that I want to highlight about Boxer's death is that his death was in vain. His death was honestly just a mere, I guess I would say, a mere sacrifice that had no value to his death. Although he is a good citizen, he gave his all to nationalism, to his animal farm, but the ending kind of gives me a perspective of how blind nationalism can ultimately lead to your own demise. So continuing on to the movie also highlights the manipulation of young minds and the sacrifices of an entire generation at the altar of war. As I've said before, back in the day, people are blinded about how war is something glorified. War is something that war is something that you want to partake in, you know, because the ones who goes to war are not old people. The ones who goes to war are the young generation during those specific times. So those young generations were all sent only to die for a cause that could have been settled peacefully. So this movie particularly highlights and critiques nationalism as a whole. So the third part is about the lost and despair, and like I've briefly mentioned before, as we all know, through the lens of Paul Bäumer himself. Paul Bäumer is the main protagonist. The novel or movie portrays the profound loss and despair experienced by soldiers, underscoring the irreparable damage inflicted by war. So just from here, you can honestly, any particular war movies, besides maybe war movies that glorifies war in itself, highlights the loss and despair of many. Like oftentimes when you watch war movies, although you are amazed by the actions that the war movies had, although reality is not as it seems, you can kind of witness there's honestly hundreds, there's uncountable amount of death experienced in the movie. So this movie ultimately highlights the loss and despair that are experienced by everyone who partook in the war. So another point about the literacy, it also highlights about controversy and censorship, because honestly, the story unflinching portrayal of war and its anti-war sentiment will ultimately spark controversy and censorship in the nationalism. It's underscoring its potent impact and the discomfort it will elicit. And the second part is that the novel or movie, it endures relevancy. Remarque, the author, continues to resonate with audience and serving as a timeless reminder of the human cost of conflict and the imperative of peace, about how valuable peace is in war. And the third part is its influence on war literature. All Quiet on the Western Front has left an indelible mark on war literature in general, shaping subsequent narratives and influencing the discourse on the human experience of war. Because Remarque's views, or how he writes his novel on war, is something that not other authors have done before them during their time. Because back in the day, everyone was pushed to go to war by nationalism. There's propaganda everywhere back in the day. Basically, if you're a young, healthy, fit male, more often than not, you are most likely have to go to war. So I think this in general puts views upon many things that not all war movies talk about. Continuing on with the second section is about the film adaptation in general, about how the imagery, but we'll go on further. So one of the main points that I would like to highlight about the movie is about its visual storytelling. So before I talk further about the points behind me, so I want the viewers to look at the left picture and then look at the right. So the left picture is when the protagonist was first enlisted. Um, I guess you could say he was, to put in simpler terms, he was just starting out at the start of the movie. He had just finished his training, and he is ready to go and kill people for his beloved country, all for blind nationalism. And to your right, you can see him after what he has witnessed, the reality of war. So the two main points here is about immersive cinematography. So you can tell that the film visuals narrative immerses viewers in the harrowing landscapes of the Western Front, capturing the visual realities of trench warfare. Trench warfare, in my opinion, is one of the one of the worst experience. Is one of the worst, I guess. I won't say war situations, but in history there are plenty of different types of war. There's trench warfare. There's guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare is during the Vietnam War, and there's also the underground warfare that involves miners, if I'm not mistaken. There's also the Cold War. The Cold War is mainly about drugs, the drug war by the CIA. Correct me if I'm wrong. Forgive me if I'm wrong. And continuing on, the second part is about the character portrayals. You can see how amazing these actors' performance. They bring life into Remarquee's character, evoking empathy in general, and also navigates the psychological and emotional landscapes of war. So the actors that has been chosen here are very good at portraying the realities of war and showing the emotions. Before, I mean, we haven't even made it to the end of the slide, but again, I would like to reiterate, I highly recommend those who have not watched the movie to watch it yourself, so you can witness and experience this priceless experience yourself. Continuing on, I will also want to highlight about the narrative adaptation, because as I've mentioned earlier, All Quiet on the Western Front is based off a novel, and thankfully, usually modern movies, they are not very faithful to the source material. The source material highlights the original source of the movie, or where it took its main inspiration from. And All Quiet on the Western Front has received many compliments because it follows the source material. It is very faithful to the source material. The film remains faithful to the novel's core themes, capturing the essence of Remarquee's anti-war sentiment and the psychological toll of conflict. And it also highlights about the modern interpretation. The 2022 adaptation infuses contemporary sensibilities into the narrative, offering a fresh perspective on the timeless themes of camaraderie, loss, and disillusionment. So essentially, to further elaborate on the second point, is that the movie, although the movie took place back in the old days during World War One, the director of the movie has made it so that the scripts or the lines is somewhat relevant to today's time. So I think that's about the second point. So continuing on is about section 3, which is the themes and resonance of the movie. So the movie highlights about the main theme. Continuing on is that the main movie highlights about psychological trauma. As we all know, the novel and its cinematic adaptations underscores the enduring psychological trauma inflicted by war, prompting introspection on the lasting impact of conflict. And the second one is its intersecting legacies. The narrative The narrative's exploration of camaraderie and loss resonate with contemporary audience, offering insights into the enduring human experience of war. Although this movie is based off World War One, there's also war veterans who have lived to this day, and and from what I've gathered, like the reviews that they've left is that All Quiet on the Western Front is very, it shows the reality of war, not like other war movies, which I cannot mention. Continuing on, it also gives highlight about the artistic interpretations of war. As from you can see from the two images, it highlights cinematic realism and visual metaphors. So cinematic realism is, it shows commitment to cinematic realism, offering a poignant portrayal of the human tools of war, bridging the gap between historical narratives and contemporary audience. So essentially, as an artistic point of view, this movie itself gives you a more clearer, broader, vivid imagination of what war is. And there's also visual metaphors, which I honestly, as somebody who appreciate the hidden values of movies, books, or any other form of literature, there's a lot of visual metaphors employed in the movie, which invites you, the audience, to engage with profound emotional and psychological landscapes of war, fostering empathy and reflection to yourself for you to reflect upon. So I don't want to give any examples of the visual metaphors in the movie, but if you've noticed, I've given one visual metaphor, but I don't want to mention it. I want you as the viewers to experience it yourself. So as we are moving closer towards the end of my movie, I think um, it's best if I end my review commemorating Remarquis' legacy, because I believe what he has done will ultimately leave a huge impact on the future generations and my generation itself. War is something that you should not glorify about. War is something that should be treated as a last ditch effort, because honestly, war is a very dark, grim reality that I don't think anyone wants to experience. So the first one is enduring impact. Eric Maria Remarquis' literacy legacy endures through the cinematic adaptations very well, fostering a continued exploration of wars, human dimensions, and societal repercussions of war. And the second one that I want to highlight is about its education relevance, because I believe the novel and its film adaptation hold educational relevance, serving as catalysts for conversations on history, literature, and the human experiences of war. So I believe that Remarquis' masterpiece will become a topic that will be talked about amongst historians or students or maybe friends, maybe, forgive me. I It can be a sort of a form of example, a good form of example to be shown or to be talked about amongst colleagues, amongst each other about the realities of war. So with that, I believe this marks the end of my speech. Ultimately, I would like to give my sincerest of thank yous again to Madam Nurul. Honestly, I am very grateful to have her as my lecturer, because not often would you see a lecturer going out of their way to help you, because honestly, funny story about my dengue experience. Honestly, I thought I was I was gonna die. Not gonna lie, because during that time, a moment during my um, bad fever, everything suddenly went black. There was one specific moment during my fever. Everything went black, and I thought I was about to die. But thankfully, I snapped out of it. And yeah, I want to give my sincerest of thank yous and appreciation to Madam Nurul for helping me, for helping me with this speech, because to be honest, I was very hesitant on. Was is hesitant the right word? I couldn't wait. I was excited to give my speech to my classmates, but ultimately, I guess God had better plans for me. So yeah, I had to do in this particular video form. So ultimately, to the viewers, I hope you've enjoyed and you've gathered maybe some values, knowledgeable values, or maybe a perspective into war. Um, so I think that's all. Thank you.